You can see more of those brighter cloud top signs of strengthening for sure. Not necessarily a sign that we want to see, but we expect continued strengthening as this moves toward the North Florida coastline. Landfall expected tonight, so this is going to move quickly off to the north and northeast. We got to plan for the worst and hope for the best. The news may be looking a little better than it did yesterday afternoon and evening, in that the core of the storm may shift a little farther to the east again based on the latest forecast track.
Exactly where is Helene?
Still over the Gulf of Mexico. It's still west of basically southwest Florida. So it has a couple hundred miles of the Gulf of Mexico to trek in the next, say, 10 hours. So that's plenty of time for it to get a little bit stronger.
And Allieann, Georgia and Alabama, all of Georgia has been declared a state of emergency, but the Alabama governor has not. So what's going to happen in Alabama?
Well, so Alabama's still going to feel those impacts, but not quite like we're going to be feeling again here on our side of the river in Georgia. So again, that track taking a little bit further to the east from yesterday, which again is good news for us because that's going to push those impacts further out to the east for our more eastern counties.
And then this storm gets up into North Georgia, still as a strong tropical storm near the Atlanta metro area. This is going to be a major problem for parts of central and east Georgia in terms of wind damage and infrastructure damage as Helene makes that track to the north. The rain continues. It's been a wet day, been a wet morning, been a wet afternoon. These showers continuing to lift up from the south. Not a lot of lightning or thunder, but we've got some embedded heavier downpours in the mix. We'll zoom out a little bit, show you Helene down here to our south. There's the eye showing up right now. You can see it getting in range of the radars here, being able to pick up that shield of rain. It continues to pump that moisture up in this direction. So flooding certainly a big concern in addition to the wind problems. You see this number on there, 105 miles per hour. You see that icon really close to the valley. We believe that kind of wind is going to be offset east of the track if it is even at 105 miles per hour by that point. So we are not anticipating those kinds of conditions here close to home. Let's show you what we are anticipating. I'll step out of the way so you can see the main wind impacts. Our far eastern counties, Thomaston to Albany there, along Highway 19, 50 to 65 mile per hour wind gusts are possible. That will, of course, knock down some trees, cause some power outages for the counties highlighted in orange, 30 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts. And again, we're not talking about sustained, long-lasting winds. We're talking about momentary gusts that are going to be enough to perhaps knock down some trees. We will certainly see some scattered power outages in these areas too. The threat may be a little better for you over in East Alabama, maybe not quite as much wind the further away from the center that you go. But do keep in mind, a hurricane is not a point on a map. It will have large impacts, wide-ranging impacts across a large area. This is a marathon, not a sprint. This is not something that just gets over. You really just got to wait for the hurricane to pass by, and it's not even passed by yet. It's sitting right over Valdosta, just a little north of Valdosta right now. Any sort of wind that would be even approaching or thinking about approaching 100 miles per hour would be east of Interstate 75. That's not us. Once we knew that storm track was going to change, we updated this map for you immediately and let you know that we weren't going to have those big impacts. Now, just to show you what we mean when we talk about a storm not being a point on a map, this is Hurricane Helene's wind field, the wind surrounding the center of that storm. Notice how it's all pushed to the right. So it's way more out here than it is out, say, in East Alabama. So that's because when you have a big hurricane, the worst impacts typically on the eastern side of the storm, the right side of the storm. When you have really wet ground like we do, and you have really gusty winds, you can certainly knock down some trees. Even a 15, 20 mile per hour wind, if you've had a tree that's been blowing around all night and the soil's really, really wet, it might not take much to give it that final push over. So we don't want to discount that threat or that possibility that we could get some trees coming down at some point into the day on Friday. But again, that's going to be more of an isolated type threat. Here's the reason why we are really lucky in the Chattahoochee Valley. This storm right there, that's the center of Helene, it never got here and moved north like that path from the National Hurricane Center. The computer data was suggesting this was going to take more of a northeast kind of feel, and that's what has happened so far. The eye of the storm passing over Valdosta, crossing over I-75. It's not even moving up I-75. It's moving more to the north and east. Therefore, the impacts are moving further away from the Chattahoochee Valley. Remember, when we're on the west side of a hurricane or west side of the storm, that's the good side of the storm to be on. The big time impacts with this system, and it's still going to knock down thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of trees out here to the east of the center, heading out towards Savannah, I-16 heading into Macon. That's going to be a corridor of some wind damage, some problems, and further north from there into parts of east and north Georgia, they'll have big issues to deal with. But we've got the weather app pulled up here for you tonight. A reminder to you, as always, if you have the app, that little menu there in the upper right-hand part of your app, those 3 stacked up lines, go to your settings right here. Make sure Storm Team alerts are turned on. Those are alerts from us here in the weather office. They're not the normal tornado warnings and things like that. You'll get those anyway if you're signed up for those on the app. But this is an alert from us in the weather office that we sometimes can tailor very specific for you, for an area where you happen to be, and we don't have to alert everybody else's phones. We can kind of target it just for certain geographic areas. So that's a really great feature, and we've been pushing those alerts to you out here throughout the course of the last little bit. On the app tonight, wanted to take a look at that radar that Tyler was talking about, but here's what we can also do. Let me go down in here, and we're going to put on the tropical overlay, and this is going to be not only the warnings, but I want to show you the actual tracks. Here we go. So this is the track from the National Hurricane Center. Now, the news here is that the storm system, the center of that storm, is right here. Look at how far removed from the actual track, the forecast track that it is. So as this has shifted east, remember, our impacts have changed. That's the point that we wanted to bring you. And really, again, once you knew this was going to happen, or once we knew this was going to happen, that's when we started giving you the different message. And we can get it out to you quick on the WTV weather app. You might not always catch it on Facebook or on Instagram or whatever it might be, but we can get it out to you real quick when we know that things are changing, and things with tropical systems can often change in a heartbeat. There's about to be a little bit of a break in the action between Columbus and this band that you see right here. So the rain is ending. Don't go outside and think, okay, this thing's over, the rain's over. So this is one band that's going to continue to push through East Alabama. Here's your break, bit of a drying out for a little bit. Here's the next band of rain from Macon down to Montezuma, down to Americus, down to Dawson. That's going to continue to rotate through here in a little bit, and this will have some stronger wind gusts in it. That's how this works. These bands will contain not only the really heavy rain, but some really strong winds coming up too. Let's take a look at the watches. There is a tornado watch out to our east. There is no tornado threat in the Chattahoochee Valley. We never thought there would be. There was a watch earlier today to our south. That was when we thought the track might be a little different. That's not the case now. So the tornado watch is east of the center of that storm. That's where the main issues are. We're happy, at least for us, that it's moved off to the east. We know that it's still a big factor, a big problem for those in East Georgia. And as that moves through tomorrow, just a note that it will keep moving north. It'll move into North Georgia, and it's going to actually start to impact places like Athens and Augusta and bring them trees down. And it will interact with some of the mountains up in North Georgia to perhaps increase some of the wind speed. So this is still going to be a big problem in the Peach State. But here in our corner of the world, we've got parts of Meriwether, Talbot, Harris, Chambers, Lee, Russell, Muskogee, and Chattahoochee counties under flash flood warnings right now. Additional river flood warnings are up there on the map too. So this is a concern. Again, rain, flooding, one of those concerns to go along with the power outages, to go along with the possibility of trees down and limbs down and that sort of thing. But it seems like the rain so far has kind of taken over as the main threat with the systems. Once we figure out where we know the storm is going, we're not going to show you something old. We're not going to show you something that's just not going to come true, not going to happen anymore. These are long duration warnings, what you're seeing here on the map. And I'll go ahead and plot some of those times on here for you. There's your Chambers County, your Lee and Russell counties, southern Russell County, and then we'll move those out of the way so you can kind of see or kind of get the idea of how long those flash flood warnings are going to be out. Now we'll do the ones over on the Georgia side of the river. This is for Chattahoochee and Muskogee counties. That's for Harris, Meriwether, Talbot counties. Those are the expiration times of those flash flood warnings, 7:30 a.m. Eastern time. So again, longer duration warnings, and those river flood warnings, they're going to be up there for a while. There's a lot of water upstream that's going to come downstream. So the river flood warnings, those will be in place for a little bit.
It's moving at 25 to 30 miles per hour. The storm is moving very quickly. So even though we're having the rain bands and we've seen the heavy rain for the last couple of days, it could be worse. We could be dealing with this rain throughout the rest of the day, but that's just not going to happen as we see it. Futurecast shows that by about 6 o'clock, so in just a few hours, the rain will be done, if not a little bit sooner, in our southern counties south of Highway 80. We think Russell County, Chattahoochee County, over to Sly and Sumter counties, and point south down toward Fort Gaines and Eufaula. You're going to be pretty much through with the rain, and not too long after 7, 8 o'clock, our northern counties are going to be done with the significant rainfall.
That tropical storm warning that was in place for some of our East Alabama counties, that was canceled. And again, we could have told you that a while back. We were trying to get folks to understand with this particular event, we didn't want you to concentrate on what kind of alert that you were under, since those have to come out for the counties. We were putting up that impact map for you and showing you what to expect through the course of the day. In fact, I'll show this up to you now. Again, this is pretty much winding down for a lot of folks, especially south of Highway 80. We're still talking about potential for gusty winds in the northern counties here, but this is what we were trying to get you to understand through the course of this event. We wanted you to look at the impacts, not looking at the individual alert that you happen to be under. I think those did a lot of maybe scaring people, hearing hurricane warning, hearing tropical storm warning, and thinking it was going to be this, what you might see down at the beach, the palm trees blowing around really hard. And that's usually, again, not how the inland areas around here deal with tropical things, especially when we're on the western side of those tracks.
So we have our meteorologist Ariana Whittick live from the river to give us an update on how it's looking. Good morning to you, Ariana.
Hey, good morning, Ben. Good morning, Cheryl. We are out here on the Phoenix City side of the Riverwalk, and as you can see behind me, the river has already started to rise, and if you can see far enough to the Columbus side of the Riverwalk, the water's already about a foot or two up on those light poles.
We spent much of last night around 10 p.m. all the way through now at the Emergency Operations Center in Sumter County. We spent some time there with Fire Chief as well as EMA Director Jerry Harmon. However, there were reports from Chief Harmon that a few trees were down, some outages were occurring. They are going to report on those now as we speak. Reporting live in Americus, I'm Macy Woodworth for WCVM News Leader 9.
We are out here on the Columbus side of the Riverwalk, and we actually moved locations. We are out in front of Rock Island, which is that rock formation in the Chattahoochee River, and this area is a little bit higher up than we were at just a half hour ago. So the river not rising up as much as we saw in the last half hour, about 6 inches off this flat surface, but this river will continue to rise, meaning more water will be pushing into this area, eventually reaching these steps here over the coming days. Now, the river is expected to crest or be at its highest point come Saturday morning. So if you had any plans to come to the Riverwalk this weekend, may have to push them to next weekend. But the highest point that this river has ever gotten, or that highest crest, comes at 55.2 feet back in 1929. So not necessarily going to be that high, but definitely to cause some problems if you had any weekend plans down at the Riverwalk. Live on the Riverwalk, I'm Ariana Whittick. Back to you guys.
A single oak tree, a massive oak tree to say the least, toppled over, hit some power lines, as well as one single vehicle that was driving along Lee Street Road. Now, there was an individual in that vehicle. The individual is said to be okay. In fact, they weren't even transported to the hospital with very, very minor injuries. And so that is the great part. However, the unfortunate part, of course, Lee Street Road is currently closed. I talked to officials. They said that they're hoping within 30 minutes to an hour that can reopen. But certainly something that we want to keep in mind is that really all night, especially in Americus, nothing has really happened. Of course, there's been some outages. Of course, the winds and rains were very strong. They have since subsided. However, this really is the biggest incident that we have seen thus far here in Americus, which is great. And also, of course, great news that the individual is okay. And power company here grounding the lines behind me, as well as removing the tree and the vehicle to get that road back open. We'll be sure to keep you updated both on air and online, of course, here in Americus. Reporting live here in Sumter County, I'm Macy Woodworth for WCVM News Leader 9.
Cheryl, thanks a lot. We're taking a look at these power outage numbers throughout the state right now. This is the Georgia power outage map. So one of the places we checked out earlier was Augusta that had over 100,000 without power. And that number has skyrocketed to over 151,000 customers of Georgia Power now without power. So think households when you think customers. So really, when you think people affected, you could probably multiply that times 4, maybe even 5 in some cases as well. On the dirty eastern side of that storm, Athens was also hit pretty hard as well. Let's take a look at what their numbers look like right now. 8,983 outages reported, but Athens is still dealing with quite a bit of this storm right now.
Good morning, Cheryl. Good morning, Ben. We have switched sides once again, and we're back on the Phoenix City side of the Chattahoochee River. Now, the reason why we decided to switch sides was to come back to the area that we started about 2 hours ago to see if the river has risen, and we can say that it has slightly risen from when we were here just about 2 hours ago. Now, at the station, we received right around 6.25 inches of rain, a little bit more than that actually, since Wednesday, with some places across the valley seeing higher totals. Now, this river isn't going to peak until Saturday morning, and you may be thinking, well, the rain is done. We're seeing these dry skies and lots of sunshine. Why is the river still going to continue to rise? That's because we have to look to the north. The areas north of us still saw lots of rain, and all that water has to go somewhere. It's going to be flowing south, down towards us here in the Chattahoochee and right into Phoenix City and Columbus, meaning that river will continue to rise until it peaks on Saturday morning. So if you had any weekend plans along the Riverwalk, either Columbus or Phoenix City, definitely not going to be the weekend to do it. Maybe wait till next weekend when we're still expecting those drier skies. But reporting live from the Phoenix City side of the Riverwalk, I'm Ariana Whittick. Back to you guys.
Well, and as we can see there, the water levels behind you, they're pretty high. What other impact did Helene have on the Fountain City?
Jason, Barbara, Hurricane Helene left some without power, a few downed trees, and as you can take a look behind me, a swollen Chattahoochee River. Director of Emergency Services for Muskogee County, Chance Corbett, says things could have been a lot worse.
Well, Helene now responsible for 43 deaths, 15 of those in Georgia, after taking an eastward path through the state from Valdosta to Augusta. Across the southeast, flooded rivers and roads rose to hospitals and homes in areas outside of the Chattahoochee Valley blocked. Florida taking on Helene at her strongest, a Category 4 hurricane. Good evening. Welcome in to coverage you can count on at 5:30. I'm Barbara Goche. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Well, across the region, millions remain without power, including hundreds of thousands in Georgia. Let's take a look right now at the outage map from Georgia Power.
And the WTV weather app getting a workout last night. Many of you, of course, keeping track of the rain, the warnings, the track of that storm. Right now, if you look at the very top of the app, you're going to see whatever warnings happen to be out. And there are a lot of river flood warnings. We're going to run down those for you coming up in just a little bit in the main weathercast here as we talk about the spots where the water is still pretty high. Of course, the Chattahoochee River, one of those places. But you'll get those alerts and you can tap on that, get some more information about what's going on.
Good evening. Welcome to News Leader 9 at 6 on this Friday. I'm Barbara Goche.
And I'm Jason Dennis. Thanks for joining us tonight. We begin with the aftermath of Helene, that hurricane finally passing some residents in the Chattahoochee Valley, still dealing with the powerful and massive storm, what was left behind.
Yeah, the damage around here not near as bad as what Helene caused in northwest Florida, South Georgia, and communities to our east. Power outages, trees in the roads, and even floods have emerged as a result of Helene. In the Chattahoochee Valley, the impacts were felt from Columbus all the way to Americus. Americus seeing the brunt of the storm's wrath with rainy and windy conditions last night.
This morning, officials were working to remove a downed tree in the city. Columbus saw flooding in a few areas, including Cooper Creek Park, and the Chattahoochee River continues to rise tonight.